Okay, let's on the issue of one screwy decision. Let's get to the other one, Robert. The immigration laws being racist. Now, it's a massive decision, and it's a massive judgment. I skimmed through it, and you're going to have to go into the details because the bottom line I took away from it is that you have immigration laws in the United States that are now that at least one judge, I believe it's a Barack Obama appointee, and I had the reflex of just reading it, what sent like a hissy fit of a decision, where they're basically saying that immigration laws that are specifically designed to target illegal immigrants are discriminatory and therefore not applicable to the very illegal immigrants who crossed the border, who were subject to the law and now subject to the consequences of the law. You have to explain the law to us. You have to explain the history to this, and then you have to explain the judgment insofar as it can be explained.
Well, it's one of the most commonly used criminal laws to deport people that have committed crimes or violated the law to get here. So if this case was upheld across the country, you couldn't criminally enforce the basic immigration law pretty much at all. So I mean so its consequences potentially are extraordinary. Now, she's right historically, but wrong in terms of its current application, in my view. I've been in front of that judge before. She tried to kick me out of a case once. Didn't know what she was doing. She thought she had the power to do whatever she wanted. I just kick the I don't like a lawyer. He's out of here. And I was like, nah, you can't really do that. And I had to explain it to her. And it was amazing watching the brain slowly process things and get back in. So not a shock that this is the judge. Now, what's historically true is if you go back far enough, all of our immigration laws have a lot of racism attached to them. I mean, one of our anti-exclusion immigration bills was called the Chinese exclusion law. So yeah, so I mean, it was clearly. I mean, there was no. That's why I found it when people are going nuts over Trump and Muslim exclusion. I'm like, we kind of have a long history of this, and the Supreme Court used to say this is constitutional. Actually,
the law in question at one point, I think it was called the judgment referred to it as the wetback law, and I also did not know what that term meant and had to Google it. But was it in fact called the wetback law, or was she just
internally? Yeah. And there are other ones. You go to the 1920s, and all you got to go through is the congressional record, littered with racial prejudice. Remember, this was the eugenics era. This is the same people who are preaching they stick a needle in your arm. They were all against the lower races coming into the country. It was mostly then. It wasn't mostly anti-Asian. Wasn't mostly anti-Latino. It was overwhelmingly anti-European, Southern European, and Central European, and Eastern European, and it was anti-Semitic too. But there was a lot of they hated the Italians, they hated the Greeks, they hated the Irish. I mean, that's why the whole Kennedy family still has kind of a grievance against the WASP. I mean, that goes back centuries of Irish WASP competition and political competition in Boston, where they were subject to. I mean, the most famous, racial exclusion sign in America was "No Irish Need Apply." I mean, that was the most commonly used one across the broadest geographic landscape. So, no question that all those immigration laws back then had that history attached to them. What did not make sense is saying, because they thought this about immigration in the 1920s, I'm not going to allow you to enforce immigration laws in 2020, a century later. These immigration laws don't have any racism attached to them at all. They have no racial prejudice in their history and their heritage, nor necessarily even in their application. They apply as strictly to Canadians as they do to Mexicans, as they do to people coming from any part of the world. I thought that was the part of saying this old history means we can't do anything now on immigration makes no sense to me.
Well, and now the law itself basically says if you've committed a crime, was it coming in beforehand or once here, or did it make a difference?
My understanding was it was once here. But it depends on the law. There's some laws that allow you to deport someone who's committed a crime elsewhere, but usually it's applicable to crimes committed here as an automatic right of deportation. And to say, you know what, that a lot of the people who invented this law a century ago, they were racist. So now we're going to pretend it's racist to deport people who've committed a crime after they're here, often after they're here illegally.
Well, the whole issue is the law. It's the law by design was intended to target that very demographic is illegal immigrants who commit a crime, and therefore, by definition, by the rationale of the judge itself, you can never have a law that would allow for such a thing.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's what she was saying. Because there was racism a century ago, you can never have any law that has this application, which is the primary enforcement mechanism to deport the most dangerous illegal immigrants in the country. So, I mean,
The
that's why it has huge political consequences. The chance it gets upheld are extremely low. But the fact that you have any federal judge willing to go that far shows where some of the judges are going.
the experts that the judge referred to that were presented to the court to explain the history of the evolution of the legislation. I mean, it's incredible that you could basically suspend application of a law that is intended to protect, and by the most obvious terms of the law, because of historical or experts who testified to the origins of the law. For those anybody who doesn't know, in Canada, it's called the Indians Act now because they changed the name. The name at the time was the Law on the Savages. In French, it was La Loi sur les Sauvages, and they changed the name because they thought that was too offensive. And now they still call it the Indian Act because everyone thought that when they came here, they saw the natives in Canada. They thought they had found the route to India, so they called them Indians. And the law still called that. But the idea of invalidating a law which is intended to protect borders and allow for the deportation of illegal entries who have committed crimes. I mean, where does the lunacy end? What is going to be the practical impact? Is the law suspended effectively until it gets appealed, or how does that work?
I mean, I don't think the law has been suspended. So that's not my understanding. So it'll be continued. The law will continue to be enforced until the Court of Appeals validates it. And I can't, even the Ninth Circuit, I can't see going this far. Even if they did, this would be the kind of case the Supreme Court would take up and overturn.